from the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal. This is All Things with Kim Strassel.
Donald Trump continues turning Washington upside down, but what's his second-term governance meaning for those who run the states? Welcome to All Things with Kim Strassel, and my guest this week is very well positioned to provide that perspective. Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy, a man who I've known a long time and got to see on the job. Governor, welcome. And from one Alaskan to another, the last frontier state is just sometimes overlooked in the news, so it's really great to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Kim. And it is a best kept secret, but through our energy conferences and other outreach, we hope to enlighten the world about the possibilities of Alaska.
Well, that is actually what I wanted to start with, just right up top, some news. You are actually going to be hosting 3 Trump cabinet officials up in Alaska about a week from now, I believe. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, Energy Secretary Chris Wright, and Environmental Protection Administrator Lee Zeldin. And I think they're going to be there for one of your famous energy conferences. What's on the agenda?
Oh, boy. Well, with those fine folks, and we are glad that they're coming up. Again, I'm a big supporter of President Trump. I don't think that's a secret for anyone. And the reason for that is in his first term, he really looked kindly upon Alaska. And he looked at Alaska as really a solution to many of America's problems. And so we continue that relationship, obviously, and we were the only state to receive an executive order under President Trump. It came out the first day he was in office, highlighting all the possibilities that Alaska can, I guess, offer the world and the United States in terms of oil, gas, timber, minerals, rare earths, you name it. And so the 3 secretaries, as I call them, are coming up, and we're going to have a sit down on the stage, and we're going to talk about what the president's vision is of the future for this country in terms of energy and critical minerals and national security, and how Alaska and other like states can play into that position of being energy dominant, national security, and bringing things home to America so that we become much stronger, more robust sovereign for our people and for the world. So I think it's going to be a very interesting and exciting time next week. We've got this energy conference that'll go on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's the 4th annual energy conference that we've had up here. But again, Kim, it's really to highlight what Alaska has to offer. We started this energy conference, and I'll just be very brief. We started this energy conference because when we would go and talk with potential investors to look at Alaska, a lot of the investors were looking at other places, Africa, Asia. And, we were scratching our heads as to why. This is America. We have so much to offer up here. And it became evident to us that they were overlooking Alaska for a couple reasons. They didn't think Alaska would be able to really take care of investors in terms of seeing their investment through because of some of the federal actions that have taken place over the decades regarding Alaska, and especially under the last administration. But long story short, the idea, again, is to let folks know that Alaska is open for business. It's just not a pretty face, as we would say. It's open for business, has a lot to offer. And this conference and the presence of these 3 fine men coming up is going to highlight that.
Let's dig into some of those, and particularly what you just mentioned. Let's take a 30,000-foot perspective here and set the scene for listeners. As we all know, the running of this great country is actually a joint affair. It's a partnership between the federal government and our 50 states. And in some states, like Alaska, you could make the case it has to be an even more cooperative partnership, given the huge tracts of land owned by the federal government in the state. But some partners are better than others, and the Biden administration was pretty rough on a lot of states who believe in economic freedom. It singled out Alaska for a lot of punishment. I think by the end of his term, the count was up to more than 70 executive orders and rules designed to limit Alaska's growth potential. Can you tell us about some of what that situation looked like before and how it was holding Alaska back?
Well, you've heard the term night and day, and that couldn't be more appropriate than in the case of Alaska under the Biden administration. Well, let's go prior to the Biden administration. We had the Trump administration. We got ANWR open. We were reopening our national forests that were closed under the Clinton administration. The president, in his last day in office, signed a declaration allowing a railroad to go across the international border between us and Canada. Critical minerals were on the table. Alaska was poised to really take advantage of the Trump administration's view that America should take care of itself. We have the resources to take care of ourselves. And, what's missed in this conversation is if it's done in America, if it's done in Alaska, it's going to be done better than anywhere else in the world in terms of the environment. Well, the Biden administration comes in and it was a total reversal. As you mentioned, upwards of 70 actions through the federal government, some through the courts, mostly through the agencies, that really hobbled Alaska's ability. It was really going to put Alaska out of business in terms of federal land. And Alaska, 63%, is owned by the federal government. But there was always an understanding, Kim, that when Alaska was allowed to become part of the Union in 1959, that we would develop our resources, both on state lands and on federal lands. And that came to a grinding halt under the Biden administration. The new Trump administration, Trump 2.0, the 4 years that Biden was in here, you can tell that President Trump and his people really looked at what needed to be done for this country and for Alaska. And that's why, again, we got an executive order on the first day. And so night and day, there's real optimism, real hope here in Alaska. We hope that a lot of what the president is doing will be codified in law by Congress so that it's not 4 years and then back to what we've dealt with under the Biden administration. But we're very optimistic that everything from oil and gas, critical minerals, strategic metals, timber, you name it, are going to be able to get investment, be developed, and create new wealth for not just Alaska, but for this country.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy. Welcome back to All Things with Kim Strassel. I'm here with Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy. Let's talk a little bit more about that energy. I think most Americans, like you said, they had no idea that this was meant to be a central premise. Part of the deal when Alaska was made a state was that it was going to be left to do a lot of this development, and that a lot of Alaskans have always understood that to be a deal that has been abandoned on one side by the federal government under the Biden administration, and that we're simply getting back to what was always meant to be. But I also think that a lot of Americans, too many Americans, actually have very little sense of just how much opportunity there is in this state. My view is that the reason Donald Trump talked about Alaska, for instance, is the one project he mentioned when he did that joint address to Congress, and he talked about natural gas development in Alaska, is because he sees its potential as just completely changing the energy equation in terms of making America a powerhouse in the world. Can you give people a better sense of just what kind of opportunity we're talking about in terms of the amounts of oil and gas and mining, as you mentioned, other logging, timber, the possibilities from Alaska?
Yeah, no. So Alaska was purchased in 1867 by Secretary of State Seward, who came in under the Lincoln administration for the purposes of its resources, but also its geopolitical location on the globe. He was such a visionary because both of those reasons for purchasing Alaska are very appropriate today in today's world. We are the Pacific sovereign in terms of America's presence in the Arctic and the North Pacific and West Pacific. People don't understand that we are very close to Asia. Alaska was the place in the world that pioneered LNG export in the world back in 1969 on a continual basis. We sent LNG to Japan for 50 years. We are the state that built the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline, which was an engineering marvel. And oil is still flowing through it today. Upwards of 13 to 15 billion barrels of oil have gone through that pipeline, and estimated that 18 billion more could go through that pipeline. So that pipeline in itself could be in existence for a total of close to 100 years if we are allowed to continue to produce oil. Trillions of cubic feet of gas for our Asian allies and for in-state use in our bases as well, our military bases. Huge military presence here in Alaska. People don't understand that Russia is literally 2.5 miles from Alaska, two small islands separated by a border. The list goes on. Critical minerals, rare earths, we have 49 of the 50 critical minerals. Our national forests are larger than a lot of our states. Just tremendous opportunity. And if we are allowed to capitalize on that, develop these resources responsibly, which we do. Right. Alaska doesn't even flare its gas. We have a real opportunity, I think, to create wealth here in Alaska for Alaska, but create wealth for America, but also serve our Asian allies. The Taiwanese will be at this conference. Folks from Thailand will be at this conference. Japanese, Koreans, others are coming to this conference because they want to be able to be part of this large gas pipeline that the president talks about and that we're promoting. And we believe will probably hopefully start construction here in a year and a half.
Really? I mean, I wanted to ask you about this because this has been a project that's been thought about, in development, tossed around for many, many years. One problem has been a lack of international backers. How has that changing and you actually do think this is going to happen now.
Right. So for a long time, the project was viewed as one large monolithic project, $44 to $50 billion, consisting of three parts: the pipeline, liquefaction export facility, and a gas conditioning plant on the North Slope where most of the gas is. And we realized that that was a large swallow for a lot of investors. And so in the past year, we've broken that project into three distinct phases. Phase one being the pipeline, the 800-mile pipeline from the North Slope down to South Central Alaska, is being pursued as we speak. Updated FEED is happening on that pipeline, where the updated estimates of the cost are being worked on as we speak. That FEED process, as they call it, should be done this fall. And Glenn Farn, who is the lead, is very optimistic that after that, they'll go quickly into FID, the final investment decision, and we could start to see pipe being ordered in the spring, and with the possibility of pipe coming up to Alaska in the fall. That's for the in-state gas first. About 200 million cubic feet of gas would serve our in-state customers, including our bases. But as that is happening, there's updated feed going to happen with our export liquefaction plant for our Asian allies. And so when we look at the timelines, there's confidence that we could have gas going to our Asian allies in 2030, 31, as well as in-state.
Are Republicans doing enough to also handle some of the regulatory barriers and other things that get in the way in these projects? We've been having a conversation in this country now for years about permitting, how long it takes to get project approval. I know the state of Alaska works hard to make that approval process something that's reasonable and also where the parameters are well set out so that businesses have certainty, but that's not the case in the federal government. What more does Trump's Washington need to do in that area?
Well, again, they picked some great people, right? With Doug Burgum, Chris Wright, Lee Zeldin, and others. I think he's done a fantastic job with putting people in key places. And they recognize it. So, for example, Doug Burgum, North Dakota, not just looking at his private background in the computing world and the programming world, but as the governor of North Dakota, he was situated well to understand the importance of energy, all kinds of energy, and what permitting does to a project. You know, there's some estimates, Kim, that currently it takes upwards of 20-some years to permit a mine in the United States of America. You're not going to get investors that want to do that. And so the Trump administration recognizes that. I think what you're going to see with the folks that he's put in there, the folks I mentioned, is a rapid move towards rapid permitting. We're lucky with the gas line because that was fully permitted under the Trump administration in 2020. So we have all the federal permits for this gas line, and that's important to note. And we've beaten back several court cases that were brought against the pipeline. So we have a pretty clear runway at this stage of the game. I'm sure there'll be other court actions, but what needs to happen is on the permitting side and on the litigation side, I think Congress needs to make some changes so that the permit process and the litigation process is not used as warfare against the project. Both the permitting process and litigation always should have been used to determine if the project is following standards, is it safe, will it harm people? But what's happened over the years is the NGOs have realized that if they can bog things down in the courts or through the permitting process, your investors will go other places. And so what has happened is they're going to places in Africa, they're going to places in Asia that don't have to deal with these permitting timelines or the litigation warfare. So the Trump administration, I hope, and Congress especially, I hope codifies changes so that we can get back to actually being a place where people want to invest.
Yeah, it's an excellent point that these permitting rules were never about giving someone a tool to just stop a project. It was to make sure the project was done correctly in the end. And that's not what's happening at the moment. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, more about what it's like to be a governor in the Trump era.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is All Things with Kim Strassel.
Welcome back. Let's talk about a few other things about what it's like to be a governor of a state under this new president. Okay, and I'm going to have to ask this one. I know it's very Alaska specific, but are you Team Denali or Team Mount McKinley?
You know, most of it's referred to as just the mountain. And the names have been used interchangeably for some time. But when you ask us, if somebody says, is the mountain out or have you seen the mountain? That's what we refer to. Yeah. We're more interested right now in getting Alaska back on track and on a trajectory that was intended when this place became a state. And so we could have discussions about place names anytime, but now's an opportunity, I think, for Alaska that we may not see again for some time.
Well, another thing, though, that is very much about Alaska and its economy, as you noted earlier, Alaska's kind of out there. It's got some different neighbors than many people do. Russia not so far away, but more notably, for the question I want to ask, is Alaska shares an enormous border with Canada, one of its biggest trading partners. I think one of Alaska's largest trading partners, maybe the largest trading partner, is China. How do you view these Trump tariffs? What has that meant for Alaska's economy and those relationships?
Well, it's certainly a time of disruption. And what I mean by that is the president, from my perspective, is trying to look at the world over the next 50 years. What is it going to look like? What is America's role going to be in leading the world, including its economy? And I don't think there's anyone that would argue that over time there have been some tariff issues involving a number of countries that have disadvantaged the United States of America. Part of that, of course, was the concept of globalism, trying to bring the world closer together through trade. But too often, it would appear that America had to subsidize a number of these different trade agreements and trade issues. I'm hopeful and I'm confident that the president, as he works through these tariff and trade issues, is going to help reorganize the world in a manner that I think benefits everyone, but does not disadvantage the United States of America. We've lost our shipbuilding capability for the most part. We don't build a lot of pipe in in America like we once did. There's a number of things that have been offshored, and they've been offshored, I think, to the detriment, and the president, I think, agrees, to the detriment of America, and not just jobs, but national security. That's why, again, Alaska is a central part in this. We can mine in Alaska. If we can process the minerals and rare earths here in America, we don't have to rely on places like China, because when we offshore these things, it's really our national security that's at risk.
But surely there are some things we just do need to trade, and it would seem Alaska is actually a good example of that, given that it's sort of out there on their own, and it does get a lot of things that come through other countries.
Yeah, we do. And it's our location. Again, we have the second busiest cargo airport in the United States and the third busiest in the world because of our location at the Anchorage International Airport. And we get a lot of trade coming over from China. We have a concept in Alaska called cabotage. No other state has it, which allows foreign carriers to land in Alaska, move goods between the carriers, and then take them down to lower 48 and other places in the world. And so our strategic location makes us, I think, a huge trading hub. We obviously want to build upon that. But again, I think what you're seeing right now in terms of the tariff and trade discussions, I think you're seeing a little bit of disruption, which there needs to be. But I do think you're going to see pretty good trade agreements occur. And I think, again, the hope is that it benefits everyone, but especially the United States does not put us at a disadvantage. And so we do have things that we can trade. We have more things that we can trade. Timber, for example. We have the largest fishing industry for the most part is here in Alaska. And we sell fish all over the world, not just to our Asian allies, but all over the world. Our seafood is considered to be some of the finest that there is. Largest lead zinc mine by many standards here in Alaska, nickel, copper, coal, hundreds of years of coal. We have uranium here in Alaska. We have the largest graphite find in North America is here in Alaska. So a lot of Alaskan-centric minerals, resources, raw materials are available not just to help us here in America, but our allies across the world.
Here's one more that I think you are uniquely situated to talk about, because as you noted at the beginning of this, you said Alaska's not just a pretty face, but it is a very pretty face. And a lot of people come up to visit Alaska. We've obviously had lots of media coverage and wringing of hands over the Trump administration's layoffs of federal employees. Obviously, Alaska has a real federal presence up in the state in national parks, forestry, firefighting, fishery management, air traffic controllers, the defense sector. What are you actually seeing in terms of those layoffs? Is it anywhere near the sort of drama or problem that the press has suggested? Where is it causing problems or not?
So certainly the workforce has been trimmed down in terms of our national forests, our national parks, et cetera. But, NOAA, for example, which is under DOI, is very important for Alaska in terms of weather, understanding our fisheries better, issues involving the oceans. And so we want to make sure that outfits such as NOAA are kept intact and can function. And I think, again, when I'm talking with some of the folks in the Trump administration, they're really reviewing all of these positions, reviewing all of their functions to really see what is focused on the core mission, as opposed to maybe some other ancillary missions that were added to it over time, especially in the last administration. And so, again, there is disruption, but I'm confident that it's going to be just a short period of time. And once we get through it, I think we're going to have, just like we all hope, very good functioning departments, programs, divisions, et cetera, such as NOAA and the National Park System, as well as the National Forest System as well.
It sounds like you're saying that you've been able, and other members of the Alaska delegation, to get in touch with the administration and express those concerns. You feel like they have been receptive to some of that?
Well, I think certainly. I think they understand. And it's, obviously it's not just Alaska when it comes to outfits, again, like the parks or NOAA or BLM. It's other states as well. And so I give the Trump administration a lot of credit. They're trying to fix things that really have gone unintended for decades. They're trying to do it in 4 short years. And during that process, there's going to be some question as to whether one decision or another was appropriate. But I'd say all in all, our discussions with the administration have been very good. I get that from fellow governors as well. And so, again, we're hopeful that, I hope in a short period of time, that things are well on track and moving forward in a manner that I think most Americans would feel is consistent with what you want from your government.
Well, let me ask you, just bring that back as we near the end here of our conversation. Talk a little bit about Alaska politics and how that intersects with what we've seen at the national level. You're going to finish your second term next year, so you'll be time limited out. As you finish in the state after 8 years, what direction do you see the state moving in politically? Will there be another Republican governor? I mean, what do you see out there among the voters that you interact with all the time?
Oh, well, I certainly hope there's going to be another Republican governor. I think it's unfortunate, but I think the Democratic Party the last several years have shown what it really stands for. And it's really not about the little guy. It's really not about creating jobs, creating wealth. It's really about radically transforming this country into something that is not familiar to most people. I mean, I was born into a country that in many respects doesn't exist anymore. With the return of the Trump administration, we are hopefully going to get back to what America was all about in terms of not just its freedoms and liberties, but its desire to be an economic juggernaut as well, and a beacon for hope for the rest of the world. Same with Alaska. Again, we have tremendous opportunity. And, Kim, Alaska was the only state that was compelled to collectivize all of its resources under the state sovereign in order to pay for itself. The federal government at the time in the 1950s really had serious doubts about Alaska making a go as a state because it was so large, had 4 time zones at one time, and so few people that they felt that an income tax or large statewide tax wouldn't be able to support it. So they really compelled us. This is the irony. They compelled us to develop our resources. And since 1970, subsequent administrations have tried to thwart or throttle our ability to do that. The Trump administration, I think, has been great for Alaska. I think going forward, certainly would hope for a Republican governor that continues working with pro-development, looking at the economy of Alaska, looking at what it can do for the world. And I think with our oil, our gas, our minerals, our forests, I think the next 50 years is going to belong to Alaska, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see how much this administration gets done in the next couple of years to demonstrate that potential. That will probably make a difference in terms of local politics, too. Governor Dunleavy, thank you so much for your time. We also want to thank our listeners. We are here every week with an episode with an interesting policymaker, a player in politics. If you like the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to write to us, you can at atkim@wsj.com.